Good day, everyone. On behalf of Global CIO Forum and Alpha Data, I welcome you all to this virtual summit on secure your public cloud infrastructure and workloads. Before we kickstart this summit, let me just give you a very brief introduction about the event. Over the past many years, and especially in these challenging times, quite a lot of organizations have started thinking about moving to cloud and making it as their preferred option. But migration to cloud is a journey, a process which has enormous benefits that comes with its own challenges. The biggest among them is security. And this is what will be the center of our discussion today. During the event, we'll focus on end-to-end security for public cloud infrastructure and workloads and how Alpha Data, along with Fortinet and Microsoft helps you achieve it. Leading us through today's virtual summit is Irfan Mohammed, who is Cloud Solutions Architect and Pre-Sales Consultant for Microsoft Technologies in Alpha Data. But before we begin this event, here are some basic housekeeping rules. All attendees are on mute throughout the session, but we encourage all of you to please post your questions to the chat option, which is available to all of you. We'll be happy to answer all these questions at the end of the presentation. Now, without any further delay, I'll welcome Irfan to take it forward from here. Over to you, Irfan.
Thank you, Manali. Thank you so much for that introduction. And hello, everyone. My name is Irfan Mohammed, and I'm a Cloud Solution Architect in Alpha Data, as you know. And I would like to thank you all for taking your valuable time today and attending this webinar, especially. And I'm sure that you have attended many webinars as such before through vendors, through system integrators, and you might have interacted with many of the consultants as well. And I'm sure that they have emphasized how much security is of an important aspect when you adopt the cloud technologies, right? And so Alpha Data is also making a small effort along with Microsoft and Fortinet to enable our customers to move towards the cloud without any hassles, keeping in mind all the security baseline. Personally, I hope you all are safe and sound in this pandemic situation. But professionally, as an IT consultant, I also hope that your workloads are also safe and secure in the cloud, right? So because the way pandemic situation has made us to move in a very fast phase, adopting new technologies, we are reducing the time we take for scrutinizing each and everything. So the reason we wanted to have this webinar is to touch base on all the important points when you do your scrutiny or when you do your cloud journey as a as an adoption, and you will be able to highlight these particular points in terms of security in your journey of cloud, right? So if you see the agenda, basically what we have today, we are discussing something about the cloud journey and what considerations our customers take when they want to adopt towards the cloud, and what concerns can arrive when you start moving your workloads to the cloud. So that is one aspect. And I'm also like to talk more about how you can protect your cloud workloads when it comes to on-premises security as well, right? So I would give you a walkthrough comparison of what you have in your on-premises and can you use a similar type of technologies to protect your cloud workloads or not. So it makes it easy for you to understand in terms of adoption, right? And I'll also walk you through a very basic baseline of security, which you can build on the cloud. Without this baseline, you will not be able to move your workloads onto the cloud securely. So I'll touch base on that baseline as well. That will help you to understand today when you go from this particular webinar, you will know what exactly you need to do to adopt the cloud technology securely. And one more interesting thing which we'll discuss today on this particular webinar will be our collaboration with Microsoft and Fortinet. In order to enable our customers to move towards the cloud. It comes in terms of an offering, a consultation, a complete end-to-end solution as well, right? So I'll walk you through that particular offering. I'll tell you what exactly the benefits of those offering is and how it can enable you to move to the clouds. So without any further ado, let's move on to the next slide and let's see what we have on the deck. So basically what we're trying to show here in this is two different sections. One section specifically talks about what considerations you take when you start adopting the cloud. And the second point, it talks about what concerns you will have once you move into the cloud, right? So these are two different aspects, and these are two different aspects basically which can come across your cloud journey. Now, if I specifically talk about the consideration, every customer will have their own consideration. Some consider cloud adoption is because they want to move away from the ownership responsibility of a data center model or a server room model, and they would like to give this ownership to someone who is more reliant, more flexible, more no agile in terms of setting up their workloads in the cloud. So data residency and ownership is one of the major consideration customer take into sometimes for adopting the cloud technology. Second can be a DevOps mindset. I'm sure not there's not much of a DevOps mindset, especially we see in the UAE region. But if you see the market of US and Europe, right, you have a lot of customers who move towards the DevOps mindset first, and then move into the other aspects of it in the technology wise. So another aspect which you see in the cloud consideration is micro segmentation as well. Micro segmentation is a use subject, to be honest, but if I specifically talk about security, you build your cloud perimeters, you build your micro perimeters in that aspect as well. So that granularity which you get in the cloud is one of the major consideration customer take into account when adopting the cloud technology. And there are many more as well, and every customer will have their own considerations, own reasons why they want to adopt the cloud. Not all can be the same, right? So we did our best efforts to put these consideration points in front of the customers to see which one is going to benefit them and for moving into the cloud. Now, if you move to the right side of the section, you see there are the concerns which are usually highlighted when you move into the cloud, right? So the one major concern is the cost strategy, because you are basically moving from the capex to the opex model, where there's no more no there's totally an operational cost involved when you adopt cloud technology. So defining cost strategy becomes one of the major concern to the customers, because the reason is moving from capex to opex model is one of a very big thing for the customer to adapt. The visibility of getting a return of investment is very less when you start adopting the cloud technologies. And how do you control the cost optimization? So all this strategy should be in the place before you actually move into the cloud, because every year there's a budget for the IT, and that IT has to constraints themselves with that particular budget. So operational model usually doesn't work out for them for the long run. So we need to come up with a proper strategy in terms of cloud optimization, cost optimization, sorry. So that is one of the concern which we have seen when we interact with many of our customers. And the other concern is modernizing applications. Our on-premises, they are just generic workloads with Apache Tomcat server or with any IaaS servers hosting applications, right? There is very less containerization. There is no serverless infrastructure. But when it comes to clouds, there are so many ways where you can optimize your applications performances using application modernization. So adopting this also becomes a tedious process for the customer, because they see the technology is capable of doing it, but they don't have the right skill set as well. So there are other concerns as well, which we come across when you speak to the customers. But the major concerns which we have seen, right, is on the operational model and also on the security. If I specifically talk about the operational model, what happens exactly is, when you are in the on-premises, you have a clear operational strategy defined. You already have your Wintel team, your Linux team, your storage team, your backup, your network security, SOC team, NOC team. Everything is already in place with a proper ITIL framework. But when it comes to cloud tech, adoption, the framework changes, because a cloud technology is a mix of everything. And if you speak with just basic cloud administrator or cloud architect, the cloud architect or administrator has the skill set of deploying any resources which is there in the cloud. So defining the operational model becomes a very tedious task for the management, especially. So there are ways that Microsoft can help, Alpha Data can help to analyze this particular operation model and build your proper strategy. There are ways which we can do that as well. And the other thing is the security. So cloud security is a huge subject. There's security concerning the end user workloads which are in the cloud. There's security concerning the IT workloads which are in the cloud. So defining a strategy for the end user security as well as the IT security will also become an important aspect. So these are some of the things which I wanted to highlight before we start our actual discussion in terms of security. I wanted to bring these all points to you, opening up a major discussion within your management as well on all the concerns which have been listed down. So moving on to the next slide, what we have is basically a comparison I have done. So what we are trying to do here is we are trying to project you a way that you can adopt your security layer on the Microsoft Azure when it comes to your on-premises as well. So on-premise security layer, we are very much accustomed. We know exactly what on-premise has, and we know how we can build it in a much robust way. But can you do the same thing to your Azure security layer as well in the cloud? Let's see if you can do that or not. So we try to compare that with the different solutions and show you what exactly we have. So if I just talk about the DDoS protection in the on-premises layer, right? You also have a DDoS protection on the cloud. You have a native DDoS protection on the Microsoft Azure, which comes with standard and advanced versions, and you can enable that in the virtual neural network. But if you're not happy with that protection, you would like to go in a more advanced way, right? You also have a third-party virtual appliances available in the Azure marketplace. So that is one benefit you should get out of it, right? So you have that flexibility, you have that milky layer itself within the cloud where you can choose multiple technologies. So that is one added advantage which I see, adopting the cloud. Coming to the perimeter firewall, you have your perimeter firewall in your on-premises placed in your perimeter, right? But in the Azure, you can also build your own perimeter firewall. You have the Azure firewall in place. And if you see that Azure firewall is not able to achieve the things which you would like to achieve in terms of functionalities, in terms of limitations, right? You also have a third-party virtual appliances. You have a Fortinet next generation firewall available where you can design your cloud security perimeter with Fortinet appliances as well, right? And you can do micro perimeters as well. You can build micro perimeters. It's a different subject of microperimeters. I think many of you might have not heard of it, but usually what happens in the cloud is you have the workloads which are infrastructure as a service. You have the workloads which is platform as a service, and you have some software as a service solutions as well. Now, these platform as a service solutions mostly communicate with the backend Microsoft network. There's a Microsoft backbone network which is available, and this platform as a service communicate with these networks, and this traffic does not go through the firewall. So what you have to do is you have to segregate your perimeter by building a separate microperimeters for the PaaS services, separate microperimeter for the SaaS service, and separate microperimeter for the IaaS service so that you can restrict whatever is needed and what is not needed as well, right? So in that way, you can build your security layer on the Azure. Now about the IPS IDS solution. In the Azure, you have the IPS IDS flexibility. You can create your own customized IPS IDS rules as well. But the problem with the Azure firewall is right now it does not support the payload inspection. So you need a payload inspection facility as well in your IPS IDS. And Azure firewall does not support. So what do? You adapt a third-party virtual appliance. Fortinet next generation firewall provides you the IPS IDS with the payload facility as well. So that will enable you to have that complete advantage of what you have already in your on-premises, right? So in that way, you know what to decide when you choose the IPS IDS solutions on the cloud. You know what to decide when you choose a perimeter firewall. You know what to decide when you do a DDoS protection as well. And the other thing which we have seen is sandboxing. Every environment in the on-premises has a sandboxing layer, right? So in the sandboxing layer, you'll isolate your network, you'll test your applications for any vulnerabilities, you check whether no, it is good for deploying the production or not, right? So all these things happen in the sandboxing environment. You cannot create any sandboxing environment in the Azure with any native solution. You have to build your own isolated VNet and then deploy your services there and test it, which is completely isolated from your on-premises as well as a cloud network, right? But you also have some third-party sandboxing solution as well. So you utilize a virtual appliance for building a sandboxing solution on the Azure, right? And apart from that, you have SSL, IPsec VPN tunneling. Azure for sure, they have a site-to-site VPN with the IPsec tunnel supported as well. So you don't have to go to any third-party solution for that. Your VPN gate will do the job for you. So in that way, you know that if you are talking about SSL tunnel or IPsec VPN tunneling, you go with the site-to-site VPN directly without any hesitation. Now, if I talk about WAF with SSL inspection, Azure has two different types of WAFs. Azure has a global WAF, which is Azure Front Door, and it also has a regional WAF, which is specific to a region that comes with the application gateway. So you choose your WAF solution in a way which fits you, whether you want a global WAF solution or you want to have a regional WAF solution, or if you feel that your WAF solution does not have more of a customization rules where you want to restrict towards a caller IP address or a remote URI, whatever it is, right? You can go with a third-party WAF solution. A third-party WAF solution which you're already well accustomed with. Maybe you have something in your on-premises which you have been using for years and you feel that is very comfortable, you have that solutions in the Azure marketplace. Now, I don't want to name the vendors, but you know very well that major security vendors are already available in the Azure marketplace, and you should utilize them because they give the solutions with a bring your own license model. You don't have to go through the pay as you go. You have the hybrid benefit of bringing your own licenses and then running your workloads on the Azure. So that flexibility also is there in the cloud technologies today. Now, if I talk about the LTM and GTM, you have the Azure Traffic Load Balancer. This is native solutions of the Microsoft Azure, right? And you also have a third-party GTM solution as well, which you can use from a third-party security vendor. And SIEM solution is very interesting. Azure has a SIEM solution, Azure Sentinel. It is not unlikely, no, it's a very advanced SIEM solution. It uses the AI ML technologies for you to get the analytical data which is required in getting the logs from your workloads. So Azure Sentinel supports multiple integration points. You need to utilize that because it can collect your syslog as well. It can collect your logs from the firewall. It can collect the logs from the on-premises firewall as well. So it has a lot of capabilities. You just have to integrate with the proper integration points and connectors, and it will do the job for you. So you don't need to go to any third-party SIEM solution for this, and no waste your money on that. Azure has a very good SIEM solution with log analytics workspace supported. And the last thing which I wanted to discuss on the container workload protection. I know many of us still trying to evolve in using the containers, in using the Kubernetes and all that, right? So still it is under adoption phase, in especially in the UAE region. But if you talk about the cloud container workload protection, I think you should utilize the Azure Security Center. It is one of the vulnerability scanning tool which is available in the Azure. It is native to the Azure and can do vulnerability scanning for all types of workloads which are hosted in the Azure. And with the Azure Defender, you have Azure Defender for AKS separately, where you can do a vulnerability scanning and assessment for your workloads on the AKS, not only on the host level, but also on the cluster level. So you can do that with the Azure Defender for the AKS. And also, if you have your Docker images stored in the container registries in the Azure, you have the Azure Defender for container registries as well. The one thing, again, which we don't have as of now is a DNS security. So you have a third-party DNS security solutions, but in the Azure, you don't have a DNS security solution yet. I think it's in preview right now. There's an Azure Defender for DNS that is under preview. So once it is coming generally available, you can utilize that functionality as well. So this is the slide which I wanted to discuss with you all before, no, so that I give you an understanding that you, whatever you have as a security layer in your on-premises, you have a similar security layer. You can build a similar security layer on the Azure as well. You either use a native solution or you either use a third-party virtual appliances for this. Both are available for use, right? And you just need to know the limitations of what exactly these products have and utilize those technologies. But you need to ensure that you're creating this particular layer in a fully functional way in your central hub. I'll talk more about how the architecture should look like in terms of security baseline. This will give you a more understanding on where all what components will be sitting and how you can secure your workloads before you move anything onto the cloud, right? So moving on to the next slide, I'm trying to speak something about the isolation of environments here. This is a logical isolation, and many of our customers might be aware of it if they have been using Azure for almost like 1 year. They will be very much aware how this logical separation has been done. But honestly, when I started learning Azure in the year 2016, 15 or 16 in between, right, I had a really hard time understanding what exactly a tenant is, what exactly a subscription is, and how they are related to each other. It took me some time to understand and grasp that understanding and build my logic behind it. So I just try to put a small effort from my end to explain you that particular aspect here. So what you see is the Azure tenant. The Azure tenant does not need any subscription at all to be hosted by itself. A tenant is basically having some SaaS services like Azure Active Directory, which can host user objects there, and it is a free for 50,000 objects, right? But in a tenant, you don't need to have a subscription to run it, right? For you to run any workload like a virtual machine or any computing or storage workload or networking workload, you need to have a subscription. Now, it goes like this basically. You have to link your subscription to a Azure tenant. You cannot just individually host a subscription. You need to link it with a tenant. Now, how many subscriptions can you link? You can link multiple subscription to a tenant, but you cannot link a single subscription to multiple tenants. So you get the idea. If you have two different tenants, you cannot link a single subscription to two different tenants, but you have multiple subscriptions, you can link to a single tenant itself, right? So that forms your base. Now, what happens here is there's new functionality which came last year. It's called as management groups, right? So management groups has given customers the ability to control their resources in terms of access management and in terms of governance and policy structure as well. So how this hierarchy fits in is what I would like to show you here. So you have your root tenant, which is basically Azure Active Directory. And under the root tenant, you create a root management group. Now, this management group is basically used for you to control the access on the root level, where you apply the access policies like RBAC controls on the root management group or the Azure policies. So you might be having a local policy or a global policy using the Azure policies, right? You apply the policies on the root management group. Then under the root management group, you create a sub-management group. Now, sub-management group can be any group which is specific to an environment. For example, you can create a sub-management group for the production environment. You can create a sub-management group for a development environment, for UAT as well. So it's subjective to how you want to utilize it. Under that sub-management group, you create subscriptions. You link subscriptions with that management group. Now, a subscription can be one or it can be many, basing on your usage. What basically happens is some people try to utilize a single subscription for all the resources, but I wouldn't advise that. You need to have multiple subscriptions definitely for you to do a cost management becomes very important. And if you have multiple subscription for different type of workloads, especially for production, UAT and dev, it'll enable you to know basically maintain that cost management strategy which you have in the place. And you might be having a different cost centers for different application as well. So having a separate subscription is always suggestible, right? So in that, you will be having multiple subscriptions and multiple management groups to control each and every peculiar points there, right? And under the subscription, you have your resource groups where you will be hosting your resources. This is nothing but a logical containers under which all the resources sit. So before I wanted to go to the next slide, I wanted to give you this information of the logical separation, how it happens in the Azure, because without understanding this particular separation, right, you cannot build your baseline of the security. You need to understand what subscription is, how it is interlinked with the management group, and how it is interlinked with the resource group and with the resources as well. So I hope this is fruitful for you. And let me move on to the next slide and walk you through the architecture, the baseline architecture, which I believe will be very important for you guys. Excuse me. Sorry. So in the architecture, what you see in the left side is basically what you have is your on-premises environment. You have your HQ, you have your site 2, you have your end user connecting from the VPN tunnel, and you also have some of your applications hosted over the internet. Now, how you're going to form the baseline over the Azure? You start with your logical separation, which I showed in the previous slide. You create your management group. What you're seeing is three different management groups right now. One management group is for the non-production workloads, which can be your development and your UAT testing. And the other management group will be your production for the production workload. And what you see in the center is a hub management group. Now, this forms a very important baseline for your security. I will tell you why after when I complete this slide. So hub is basically your central hub or where your shared services are hosted. Okay, your shared services can be your DNS, your Active Directory, your certificate authority server, your firewall, your management subnet, your SIEM solution, all the shared services which is being utilized by your workloads in the environment will be hosted in the central hub. So you need to define this logical separation very cleverly. Now, once you do this hub and this logical separation on the management group, you then link the subscriptions for this. So as I said, it's preferable to have multiple subscription for each type of workloads. What you're seeing right now is three different subscription. One subscription for the production, one is for the non-production, and one is for the central hub or for the shared services, basically. You link this subscription with your management group, and then under the subscription you create the resource groups, sorry. So the resource groups, what we have done is we are creating the separate resource group for the development, separate for the test, separate for the production, and separate for the hub as well. So once you create the resource groups under the subscription, you start creating the resources. Now the resources which you see right now is a virtual network. We are creating a virtual network for development, for test, and for the production, and a separate virtual network for the hub VNet, right? So once you form this particular logical boundary, you create your resources, And what you're seeing right now is a hub and spoke topology, where all the spoke units cannot communicate with each other directly. For the communication to happen, they have to get paired with the hub VNet. So this is how you're forming your baseline in terms of your virtual network. And once you do this, you start creating your subnets. Those subnets can be specific to the application or specific to a database to application tier, a web tier, or a DB tier as well, right? You create your subnets accordingly basing on that for development, test, and UAT for the production environment. And each subscription will be isolated through your network security groups. So in the Azure, a subnet can communicate with other subnet. Sorry, a subnet can basically communicate with other subnet, and if you want to restrict that communication, right, you have to apply a network security group on a subnet level. In that way, all of your east and west traffic will be controlled with your network security groups. And all your northbound traffic will be controlled with your firewall, obviously, right? So if I talk about your shared subscription here, your shared subscription is basically your hub, and in this you can see there's a separate subnet for the firewall. There's separate subnet for the management group where you will be hosting your jump servers for any access management. There is separate subnet for the SIEM solution where you'll be hosting your SIEM solution, whether it can be a third party, or it can be Azure Sentinel Log Analytic Workspace as well. And you can also host your WAF to publish your network. So once you form this entire base infrastructure by doing a logical separation and isolation, right, then you establish the connectivity. The connectivity is established in two different ways. You have your public endpoint exposed through the WAF. You have your private endpoint connecting with your on-premises network, and for your end user traffic to go through the VPN, right? So this forms the entire base of your security line, which is very important to understand. So tomorrow when you go to your environment and you discuss with your network and security team, you know what to tell. You know what logical separation you need today. You need a separation of the subscription. You need a separation of the management group. You need a separation of the resource group. You need a separation on the virtual network level and the subnet level. And most importantly, you need a separation of the shared services as well as services which you consider as your application, web, and database tier. So this separation is very important for you to deploy your workloads on the Azure. Without this separation, I would not prefer to deploy my workloads anywhere at all in the cloud because it is a public cloud, right? I hope this has been informative to you. And considering this particular baseline, you can see the architecture, how exactly it looks like. You have your on-premises network and your public endpoint, and then you have your shared subscription where you're hosting all of your hub networks, right? And also you have your web tier, business tier, and data tier, and also a separate separation for the app services as well. Now, I would like to emphasize one small point, especially on this particular spoke VNet where you're hosting your PaaS services. What you see in this web, business, and data tier is your infrastructure service model, and I've separated the spoke unit of IaaS services to the PaaS services because PaaS services are a little bit different from IaaS. We know it very well, right? So in the PaaS services, there's a lot of communication which happens with the Microsoft backbone network. This is necessary because it has to communicate with some of the managed storage accounts at the backend. It has to communicate with some of the metrics that needs to be shared to the Microsoft at the backend. So some traffic will be definitely going to the Microsoft backbone network, which you cannot control. If you try to control it, the services will not be able to run completely. So there are certain ports which Microsoft says needs to be open, especially through NSG, and it is important for them to communicate to that services. But if you don't open that, right, the services will not run as expected. So it is very important for you to create a small micro segmentation again separately for PaaS services, and then link it with your hub and control the traffic in that way. So this is very important for you to consider the right away, because I know so many of us are inclined towards adopting Azure SQL databases, which is a PaaS service. Some of us are adopting AKS as well. Some of us are adopting managed disk as well. A lot of things are happening. So it is very important for you to understand what is the baseline, what is the dependencies with the Microsoft services at the backend, and how you can secure it and isolate it in a way that there's no issues or concerns raised by the security team in your environment, right? So this is basically the baseline architecture which I wanted to bring in front, and I hope this has been more knowledgeable to you, and I hope this reached your expectation as well. Coming to the next slide, we are going to speak something about a solution which we're offering to our customers. Now, this is in collaboration with Microsoft and Fortinet. And as you know, Alpha Data is a Microsoft Gold partner, and we are also advanced specialized partner in one of the cloud platform as well. And we have advanced partnership with the Fortinet as a Forti partner in the UAE region. And welcomely, we are also the Partner of the Year award from Microsoft for the year 2020, right? So this gives us an added advantage when it comes to reaching out to our customers as Alpha Data as a system integrator, because we have extensive experience on the security portfolio, and we also have a highest level of partnership, and we have proved ourselves by being the winner of the Microsoft Partner of the Year as well for 2020 with few of the unique solutions. So we came up with a particular solution for our customers. It is called as Cloud Advanced Integrated Security, and it is powered by Fortinet with Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework as well. And the reason is we came up with this solution is because we were of the idea that customers need to adopt cloud technology into the fullest, not just half baked, into the fullest. And they need someone to be a part of this journey on the initial phase itself, covering the end-to-end solution. So our idea was to cover this aspect, and I hopefully we were able to do that with this solution. So what exactly the solution is about? We have defined differentiated solution in two different aspects. Basically, one is for the standard, other is the enterprise. Now, standard mostly focuses on the small and medium businesses where you have the end user base of at least 100 to 500 users, and the enterprise focuses on the user base which are more than 500, especially on the enterprise level customers, right? So we have defined this particular solution in two different aspects, basing on which we are helping our customers to adapt the cloud technology. Now, how this solution is different, I will walk you through the benefits of it in the later slides. But before I move on to these particular benefits, I would like to emphasize on the assessment as well. So we do assessment for free. It is a 2 weeks assessment. What we try to do here is we try to do a fit gap analysis. Now, what exactly is fit gap analysis? It is basically a way we go and enter into the customer's environment, whether it be a cloud environment, whether it be on premises, whether it be a hybrid model. We assess the environment of the customer. We create a report for the customer saying that you need to be ready with these particular aspects. You already have these many in place, but you need to be ready with this as well. And then only you should be able to move your workload to the cloud. So we do this assessment for them so that they get the confidence that yes, they are ready with the cloud adoption and they can start moving the workloads to the cloud. So that assessment comes out with the recommended HLD and LLD designs as well in terms of security, network, in identity and access management, governance as well. So we cover all the major four areas for you to understand that you are ready to move to the cloud, and you should start your journey with this particular high level and low level design. So the assessment is free. You can utilize that assessment basically through Alpha Data system engineers, and they'll be able to help you out with that particular aspect. Now, the deploy part is basically where we actually go ahead and help you deploy the resources. The resources can be helping you build your landing zone into the Azure, which you have just seen in the previous slides, the architecture. We'll help you to analyze, we help you to migrate, we help you to adopt the technology to the fullest, when we also help you to support that for entirely 1 year. So all these aspects are covered in the deploy standard package. So I'll walk you through the benefits of it in the next slide, where we will see what exactly is the benefit of having the standard package and what exactly is the benefit of having the enterprise package as well. So if I talk separately about the standard security package, we know a customer when they're going to build a hybrid cloud model, what exactly they do, what exactly they need. They need a connectivity. They need a connectivity from the on-premises to the cloud. So you need a site-to-site VPN. You need to sync your identities to get a single sign-on experience and utilize the federation power of the Azure Active Directory, right? You need to have a secondary DC just to have a kind of secondary site as a DR site on the Azure, and at least you might be needing one web hosting services as well, and also a firewall with a complete HA. So we know that these functionalities are basically needed when you start moving your workloads to the cloud in a secure manner. So we have built our build solution considering all these aspects. Now, what the benefit which you get from here is basically you'll be getting a first free month of usage of $1,000 as an Azure credit. So your consumption for the first month it will be free for you for almost $1,000 consumption. So imagine if you have a workload of 3 or 4, where you're just running your firewall, your site-to-site VPN and everything. I think it will be basically free for you to utilize that services for entirely 1 month. And plus, you'll be getting your public IP addresses for free, at least 2 for the standard package. So this is some of the package benefits which you get. Apart from the additional tools and support which you get under this package is basically you'll be getting a partner technical support, which is from Alpha Data. Will help you to will help you to design the landing zone, the architecture itself, and will also help you to implement that particular landing zone in terms of the native solutions on the Azure, right? And will also help you to perform the assessment to migrate your workloads up to 20 VMs. So imagine you have 20 virtual machines that you want to migrate into the Azure. So we do the assessment for free in that aspect, and we'll also migrate the 10 workloads from on-premises to the Azure by considering all the aspects of the health checks as well, and also incident management as well. And finally, we'll provide you 1 year annual maintenance support for entirely 1 year. This is a remote support, but it is needed for you to utilize the complete cloud technology at its fullest. So all these things which I've just told to you, right? Everything is included in a single bundled package, which you're seeing for the standard, which is around $37 a year, right? And this is including all the cost of the services, all the cost of the licenses, as well as for the remote annual support. It is very interesting because I'm not sure if any of other other system integrators or anyone has given this particular package offering, but we try to cover every single aspect of the solution into a single bundle so that the customer doesn't have to raise a purchase order separately for every single aspect of the licenses, and it will make the customer things very easy. Now, moving on to the enterprise package, what you have is very different, not very different basically. It is similar to what you need as well in terms of building a hybrid cloud model, right? So what you're seeing here in terms of benefit is you're getting first free month usage, $1,500 free month usage, and all the public IP addresses will basically be for free if you are hosting in your Azure subscription, right? And apart from that, we'll help you to migrate 25 virtual machines from your on-premises into the Azure, and we'll also help you to do assessment for 100 virtual machines. So this is the package benefit which you get as an enterprise customer if you're going to adopt the cloud technology through Alpha Data, Fortinet, and Microsoft. So this is one particular benefit which I wanted to highlight personally because this is something customer needs as well, because they need to understand what exactly they're going to get, what exactly they're going to need, and how exactly they're going to maintain as well, right? And coming to the next slide is basically I'm talking about what is the target Azure consumption, which is included as a part of this particular bundle. So both in the standard and enterprise packages, we are covering the FortiGate licenses. We are covering the virtual machine consumption for the FortiGate VMs, right? We are covering the domain controller, which is running on the Azure, a site-to-site VPN. We are also considering Security Center, Azure Defender for your vulnerability assessment in terms of integration with your firewall as well to do the vulnerability scanning. We are considering one free PaaS service where you can host your web services as well. If you have a web application which is based on .NET or Java based, right? You can deploy your web application using the PaaS service model. We are providing that as free as well in this particular bundle. Then we are also in terms of implementation and services, we are doing the Azure landing zone assessment for you. We will do the fit gap analysis. We'll assess your entire environment. Will help you to enable the entire high level and low level device design in terms of documentation. So this is what we are doing in different. And apart from that, we are doing the implementation of this landing zone, and we're also doing the migration of workloads, both for standard and enterprise. Of course, the variation, the sizing, everything differs. We have some of the sizings mentioned at the left side, sorry, at the right side, you can see the sizing for the web app services will be 4 core 7 GB RAM for standard package, and there for enterprise it is a 4 core 14 GB RAM premium V2 tier. So there are some sizing aspects which we will highlight to the customer once we come into discussion with them, that these services will be free for standard and enterprise, basing on the number of users they have, and basing on the bandwidth which they need for the firewall as well, the throughput which they need for the firewall as well. So this is a very carefully designed solution with the expert from Microsoft, Alpha Data, and the Fortinet. And this is something will be very much useful for our customers, especially in this region, where they'll be able to focus more on deploying the workloads and adopting the cloud in a very smooth and transitive way, right? So this is it. This is what I wanted to highlight. I hope you guys like the slide which I presented. I hope you like the content which I presented as well. And I'm sure, no, I could not cover all the points in here because, security is a very big subject, and there are a lot of aspects in the cloud security. If I name a few, there's Azure Security Center, there's the Azure Defender, there's the E5, M365 E5 suite, which talks about the Cloud App Security Broker, the MCAS solution, right? There are a lot of other security products which is already there in the Azure that will enable you to more securely. And there's one more interesting piece of Microsoft is the zero trust model which they have built. So there's a very good white paper which you have in the internet from Microsoft. It's a zero trust model which you can build in your environment that talks about how you can secure your applications, how you can secure your devices, how you can secure your users, how you can secure your enterprise environment. So all the layers of security which you have in your environment can be secured with a zero trust model. Okay, so this model is very interesting and very subjective as well. You should refer to it. That is my advice. If this content has been more helpful to you, definitely please provide your feedback as well. Now we can take some question and answers. Manali, over to you.
Hi, Irfan. Thank you so much for the much detailed presentation. I especially like the part about where you explain the nuances in microsegmentation in Azure baseline architecture and why that logical separation is important. Very informative that was. Now, let's move on to the Q&A. And as you mentioned, that operational part is a bit of a concern in cloud adoption. So what does Microsoft recommend as the operation model strategy? Are there any framework guidelines there?
Yes, that's right. It's a good question, Manali. So Microsoft has a framework and guidelines as well. There is a cloud center of excellence model. It's not only with Microsoft, it's with all the major cloud vendors as well. But there is a guidance of cloud center of excellence which the customer should refer to. The cloud center of excellence talks about this operation model separately as a different subject there. It will tell them how exactly you need to separate your teams, how exactly you need to build the skill set of your teams within your organization, which will enable you to move towards the cloud, which will enable you to ease out your operational task on day-to-day basis, and which will enable you to create a proper RASI metrics, right? The responsibility metrics in terms of team's advancement. So this is a very good model. You should refer to the documentation. It is not a small document. It's very extensive and very subjective as well. I think I would prefer customers to refer that and gain more insight on the cloud center of excellence as well.
Okay, okay. So moving to the next question regarding the protection of Azure security workloads, how do the customers decide if they want to choose the native Azure security solutions or whether they should opt for any third-party solutions? Is there any criteria you would like to share?
Yeah, basically, I have walked through some of the major technologies which is already there in the on-premises and which are there in the cloud and which are not there in the cloud as well. So one aspect which I discussed, I think, was about the IPS IDS solution in the Microsoft Azure. You have the IPS IDS, but you don't have a payload no inspection facility in the Azure firewall. So you have to go with the third party at that time. So I would suggest customers to basically assess the native functionalities first in the Microsoft Azure, because the native functionality will have a more strong integration points or integration connectors with the Azure workloads. Okay, so you assess your native functionalities in the Azure if it's available. If it's not available, then you go and assess your third-party solutions. So other thing is about the DNS security. Microsoft does not have a DNS security solution as of yet. It's a preview future where you have Azure Defender as a DNS for DNS, right? But if you talk about a third-party solutions, you have Influxbox DDI as well. So there are other third-party solutions for DNS security. So you have to wait. Either you want to wait for the preview feature to be generally available, or you adopt a third-party solution at that time. So, but you still need to assess it. You have to assess the native if it's available. If it's not available, you adopt the third party.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So some more questions coming in on the guidelines actually. Any additional guidelines you would like to recommend for security and governance? You mentioned some already in your presentation, but anything extra you would like for the customers to keep in mind?
Yeah, definitely. There, as I said earlier, like I could not cover all the points which is there in this presentation. Security is a huge subject basically in Microsoft. So if I talk specifically about the additional guidelines, I would ask them to go towards the cloud adoption framework. That is one important part. There's a CAF model available in the Microsoft Azure documentation. Cloud adoption framework will discuss completely what exactly you need as a baseline. There's Azure policies, there's resource tagging, there is no management group, subscription, everything, a structured way of approach that you can do with the CAF model. That is one thing. And the other thing which I think brought in this point as well is a zero trust model. So zero trust model, there are two different aspects to it. One is the end user security, other is the cloud workload security. End user security comes with the E5. You have M365 E5 suite. It has the complete security features like CASB, ATP, AIP, PIM, PAM, and all that, right, which provides the end user security. But there's also other aspect to it of the workload security, which you need to consider, that comes with Azure Security Centers, Azure Defenders, Windows Defenders, and the other security aspects. So refer the zero trust model. That is what I would recommend. And also the CAF model that will help you to have a proper guidelines in place in terms of security of workloads.
Okay, okay. And now some more coming in on advanced cloud integrated security offering actually. So our viewers want to know, with this complete solution, will this complete solution cover the security requirements, or will they be needing more? Like, is the solution enough, or anything extra is needed?
See, the solution is enough for a baseline, but but it is more is needed there, because if the solution only contains next generation firewall of the Fortinet, a site-to-site VPN tunnel, right? The only few security points which we are considering, and a landing zone implementation. In terms of implementation, it is covering everything, but in terms of services that you need, right, it is not covering everything. You still need to have a SIEM solution in place. You still need to have a WAF solution in place. You still need to have a proper structuring in place, right? So all these things are completely not covered as a part of services, but as a part of implementation and remote support, it is definitely covered.
Okay, okay. But what all is covered in the landing zone implementation, which you just mentioned?
So in the landing zone implementation, whatever services which we have considered as a part of this model, as a bundle, right, that is being covered. We will help them enable deploy a domain controller in the Azure. We'll help them establish a site-to-site connectivity. We'll help them deploy the Fortinet next generation firewall with a high availability, right? And we'll help them to design the hub and spoke topology as well with the proper VNet peering, etc., right? And we'll help them to create a proper subnetting as well. So all this is a part of a landing zone design, which will be covered as a part of the solution. And at the final stage, if they want to add any additional security components like basically a SIEM solution as well, like those part will not be covered. That will basically be additional scope of work, and we can probably discuss with the customer to see how we can utilize that, and we'll be able to help and support them in that aspect as well.
Okay, okay. I think this is the last question which we have coming in. You mentioned about the free assessment which you offer to your clients and about the fit gap analysis.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate a bit more that how you're going to do the assessment for customers' cloud readiness?
Okay, yes, good question, Manali. So basically, in the assessment phase, what we have is we call it as a fit gap analysis. What we do is there are customers who have already adopted the cloud. There are customers who have just moved few workloads in the cloud, and the customers who are completely on premises. They don't have any hybrid model. We go through any customer. It doesn't matter whether they have hybrid cloud or on premise or just public cloud. We go to the customers, we meet them, we interact with their teams as well. The team can be security, networking, server administration, operations management. We interact with all the teams to understand what is their monitoring solution, what is their virtualization infrastructure, whether it's a VMware or Nutanix, right? What is their security layer? Which firewall do they have? Do they have Fortinet or do they have any third-party firewall? What exactly is their operational model? So we discuss all these aspects. We'll come to basing on this aspect, we'll analyze the gaps between them that needs to be filled before they move into the cloud. We'll generate a report for them. That report will give a proper assessment phase, right? And in that report, we'll also recommend a high level and low level design. Now, this design is recommended by us, but it can be the decision will be finally made by the customer to adopt it or not. But our recommendation will give them a proper high level, low level design with a proper report that you need to be ready with these particular services. So this is what will be covered in the fit gap analysis. We're not going to do any assessment on the migration of workloads in this. We are only going to do assessment on the network security, identity and access management, and governance. This is what we are basically doing assessment for.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much, Irfan, for answering all the questions in much detail and giving your viewers a 360-degree roundup about Microsoft Alpha Data and Fortinet security collaboration for cloud infrastructure and workloads. With that, it's a wrap on today's virtual summit. On behalf of Global CIO Forum and Alpha Data, I thank all the attendees for being with us today. We look forward to seeing you again. Goodbye and have a nice day.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day. Thank you. Thank you, Manali.
Thank you.